There we go. Magic words. All right. So we're all live, so no more swearing. So, all right. Thanks, Cody. So we are recording at this particular juncture. Sorry for starting a couple minutes late. But we got a couple hours scheduled here. Basically, what we're going to be doing is sort of picking up where we left off. But I do, you've seen all the thunder because I forward stuff to you guys in advance of the meeting, so at least you have a chance to review it, and in case there are any particular questions or things that come up. But a general update on the process. Kudos to Sherry. She held a on her own, just because we had quite a bit of conversation with regard to the green area of town, the western side of town, with regard to that little gold star on the future land use map and growth center related discussions. So Sherry took it upon herself to try to schedule a meeting in that general area for those residents and anybody else that wish to attend, to just provide some input in terms of if there were some kind of a growth center out there, what would be the kinds of uses that would be welcomed in that area, or at least in keeping with that area. I believe that I know Sherry shared the information with me. I can't remember if I'd forwarded it off to other folks, but there are some notes and stuff from that. And Ann Dixon helped Sherry, and I don't know if there was someone else that helped you, Sherry, but it was seemed to be a good group of folks with some good discussion. Let's see.
Bob also helped.
Okay. We've had a number of different with the public meeting number 2, which was a kind of a disaster with regard to that separate little program that we did. We were able to put that up online and got some feedback from a number of folks. So and then I think you can see from the stuff that was forwarded by me, all of the comments that came in with regard to that process, whether it was live that night or through the equivalent of a survey, converting that stuff into a survey. We received all the comments, and Beta is, factoring those in, or has factored those in. All of the existing condition chapters have been submitted to the state, and I think at this point we've received back comments for each of those existing condition chapters from the state or the appropriate state entity. Beta has made the necessary changes, or is still amid making those particular changes. So that's good. Related to that you all got and just today, you got an email for the draft plan. There are a lot of little caveats to that. I actually made Emily do that against their better judgment, because I want to be able to have the council, not only you folks, but the planning commission eventually, and the council especially eventually, have a level of a full draft sitting in front of them so they know what's coming down the road to them. I don't want to just have the council, I don't want to just hand them, a 200 and whatever it's going to be, 220 page document when we're ready to go to public hearing and say, here it is, guys, and then Beta's gone away. I want to be able to get something in their hands so they at least have a flavor of what's in it, what is what's going to be the general format of the thing. So there's a level of familiarity for them, so that when Beta does ultimately provide us their ultimate deliverable, it's not a big old surprise to the town council. And obviously, if there are some major concerns that they want to raise, or you folks or the planning commission, I want to be able to sort of flesh that out before we get to that tail end process, and then try to tackle it during the public hearing process. So the draft that you received today is a big one. It generally is taking on the the format that we anticipate that it will come out in. I'm the one that basically said I want to see the future land use up front, at least closer to the front, because under the, for instance, the 2010 draft plan that came out, it was about 2/3 of the way down through the document. And to me, that was just, for a big, huge document, that's just way too far down into a document, especially for one of the most important chapters of the plan. So I've asked them to move that up front. Also, we're trying to do some kind of a, it's not an executive summary, but it's kind of like take all the goals and objectives and the vision statements and put those up front. So thinking of that as kind of the executive summary. And then if someone really wants to fall asleep with all the existing condition chapters and the appendices and all that sort of stuff, well, they can go and read it. But the attention span of the normal person is going to be for that first part. So that's why trying to get the vision, the goals, the policies, the land use up closer to the front of the document. It'll be appropriately indexed and table of contents and all that sort of stuff at the appropriate time, so someone can find stuff. But I've always found that people want to dive right into the beginning and they want to see what the plan's all about. So I think you'll see that as part of the draft that's before you. Please pay attention to all of the caveats that Emily put forward. It really is a document that is not ready for public consumption yet. It's not that there's anything secret or hidden in there. It's just the one nervousness of Beta is that they're not yet ready to sort of say this is ready for public consumption. And if we just handed it to somebody, someone would say, well, it looks like there's all different kind of design issues in here. And this is our consultant and this is what they put together. Oh my God, right? So that we're just trying to protect a little bit against that, because Beta is not yet ready to have stuff go out there for true public consumption. But the document, for the most part, is there as a whole, minus the one of the natural resource component pieces of that. I held off for a day getting this off to you because when I originally got it, it didn't have the land use section yet dumped into it. So when Emily got the land use section dumped in today, that's when she forwarded it to me, and I turned it right around to give to you folks. So I tried to get it where it was as close to in that preliminary, wholly draft, interim, any other word that speaks to a draft format before it went off to you. So please kind of take a look at that. If you sort of have suggestions or fears about how it's kind of structured, probably sooner than later, get that kind of insight to me, copied off to Emily at the same time frame. So that's where the plan sits at this point. And I think it does give a good, it does give you sort of a boots on the ground look at where the plan is today. And obviously we can tell where Beta needs to do some additional work, and they are doing additional work. But you can at least see where they're headed with regard to format and all the goals and the policies based on all of the insight that's been received to date, including the input that you guys have provided. The overall style of it is going to be done through an Adobe product called, what was it called? I can't remember what it's called, iDesign or IsDesign or something like that. And that's it's sort of an Adobe version of a publisher type of software. So they are using that. Right now, there are a number of the existing condition chapters are just dumped in as a regular PDF. They haven't been taken through that design software yet, but that's forthcoming. Any questions to date, sort of on those little status things? Okay. So where the next, what we're trying to deal with is looking, there is in your email, you also got a revised future land use map. This thing I can put, if we get into talking about it, I can put it up, I can share the screen, but that should have been in your email. basically, according to Emily, that's based on your feedback. It's based on what they would like to do in terms of putting it before the public as part of the first draft of the plan. Excuse me, there is some introductory text that she provided, again, that had draft scrawled all over it, so to speak, with a watermark. So we're looking for some particular feedback on that tonight, if anyone's done that. And then, and ultimately, that obviously is going to become one of the key maps in this whole town plan process. So we'll spend some time on that tonight. That's going to be a major focus point on that. And I'm just seeing what else is in the other stuff is upcoming, and then other considerations that we can get to from that standpoint. So to sort of to dive into it, because I know I'm babbling away here. Revised future land use map. As you may remember from the last meeting, we had a set of sort of like PowerPoint slides that Emily had put some things together. It included the future land use map. I see your hand, Bob. Thank you. Future land use map for the state, and then what we have here. And we had some levels of discussion. This map has been altered a little bit based on that particular discussion. So, Bob, you had a question or a statement? Go ahead.
I got a few statements. I've made some comments, and some of them I don't see incorporated, and I'm a little concerned about how the map was generated and how some of the residential areas are plotted, when a lot of what I see in certain spaces is open space, and it's, instead of being green, it's yellow.
Okay. Yeah, I remember we had some discussion about the yellows and the greens at the last meeting. So I don't have, I'm the one that, to save a little cost, Emily's staff is not here. This is kind of part of the agreement that we worked out with regard to doing the amendment to their contract. So if you've got, what I would ask you to do is to basically shoot an email with regard to specifically, I sort of focused on how did they decide between what our conversation held in terms of how the decision was made to either, incorporate some changes or not. That's probably a harder question to answer than it is to ask. But if there's a level of specificity that we can get to, Bob, to help address that, to either clarify or continue to alter this map, then I think that's part of tonight's discussion.
I mean, one of the classic spots on there is the Camp Westwood YMCA map area of land, which is located off of Harkney Hill Road on the Quidnick Reservoir. And it shows up as residential, even though it's basically open space, because it no longer even has campsites on it. Okay. Yet it shows up as yellow for residential. So if for some reason, the Pawtucket YMCA were to walk away from that, the developer would be all over it faster than flies to find something that your dog left behind.
Yep. Okay. So if the one major reason, obviously, why I'm recording this is so that Emily can listen to it. Should they need to deal with that in terms of those kinds of changes. If there are specific things that are parcel based that can be identified and then just sent off to Emily, that would be good to do that outside of our particular meeting, because I think 2 hours is not long enough to get into a ton of parcel specific stuff. But I understand there's an overall question with regard to those areas that are marked residential versus open space, and you've mentioned one specific parcel that needs to be checked on. Are there other ones, Bob, that you've got in mind?
Yeah, there's some huge ones that I'm looking at, and I haven't gone any deeper because there's to try to look at the parcel size versus the fact that it may be a 50-acre parcel with one house. Or in one case, it's like a 120-acre parcel with one house, but
Yeah.
yet the whole thing is shown in yellow.
Gotcha.
And,
Oh,
that's kind of saying, okay, that's just ripe for subdivision on a land use map, which means the developers are gonna say, well, look, the land use map says it was residential. So why can't I, use it residential, and why aren't we focusing on keeping some of this as more open space?
Yep, yep, no, I agree. As a sidebar, it doesn't answer your question, but as a sidebar, I think it might help. Is that related to that Coventry Crossings development, which is the tree parcel out on Nooseneck and Harkney Hill Road. There is a large segment of the neighbors that have put a proposal in for a zoning amendment to the town council to create a new zoning district and related text that's really an open space conservation type of designation, and obviously they want that parcel to be in that designation. So, and they do mention as part of their proposal that this is the first parcel. Obviously, they're trying to kill the development, but just to speak at a higher level at this point, they're basically saying this is a key parcel that we need to protect in town. There are other parcels that we need to probably re-examine zoning under with regard to this new district that they're proposing. So I do think there's a balance between what you're offering, Bob, and what that group maybe unwittingly is proposing, to look at the yellows and the green areas and say, well, if we had a new district like this that's sort of open space / conservation, what would be the parcels that we would want to put into that, that currently are in the yellow or the green. And I think that to a degree that plays into, for those that live out in the Western Coventry area, what I'm terming Western Coventry, might enjoy. Lynn.
Yeah, I have actually the opposite issue. And again, maybe this is just an email to Emily. And if so, I apologize for bringing it up now, but there's a parcel off Mishnock Highway there that's currently showing in yellow, which was just recently purchased by Kent County Water, which is going to stay open space.
Yeah.
So clearly obviously this is a static map, and can't be updated every 5 minutes. But I guess the underlying question is, how was each one of these areas designated? Was it based on zoning or existing tax assessor data, or, so how did they come up with those colors? And then secondarily, who's gonna maintain it to be up to date?
Right.
So I guess this may be a longer conversation, but I just thought I'd mention that now.
Yeah, so typically these maps have the disclaimer, which this one does have on it, that has this map is intended for planning purposes only. But I agree with Bob that as these things as we really get a town plan in the future, this town plan is going to be paid attention to a lot fairly closely, because it's not just an expired 1992 plan anymore. It will actually be truly effective. And this map is a key map that's used to change zoning, to guide development. It's intended to be used for the visioning, the goals, and the objectives. So yes, it is static in time. It will have to be amended over time, whether that is on the normal course of a plan expiring or periodically throughout that, given certain updates. How the map has to be looked at is, by practitioners like me that have to recognize that, yes, there's a future land use map that has a certain designation, but in real time, there are things that occur. Development occurs, Kent County Water Authority comes in, purchases things, and we will have to recognize that as we move forward. In part, that's through implementation of the town plan, like updating the zoning to accommodate what might be on here, to do other things such as make sure that the Conservation Commission, Land Trust, other sorts of things are doing their particular jobs for what we have here as the future land use. But that always does present a level of conflict or contradiction sometimes as we move forward. That's where where I've worked with town plans is that when you have your overall vision or you have an overarching principle that will speak to saying that sometimes things are contradictory and that this following 50-word sentence is the overarching principle for the town or something along those lines, which is, you know, hopefully that kind of language will come out once we're done with this particular thing. Lisa, I think you were first.
Yeah, so hate to ask a dumb question, but where will I find the map
Oh, so
that
in your
we're referring to?
sorry, in your email,
Yeah.
January 23rd, I think is when I sent I forwarded forwarded stuff from Emily, or I sent it myself, and that map is embedded in that as an attachment.
Okay,
And if you can't, if people want me to share the map on the screen, I can do that. We just don't have the benefit of seeing each other, that's all.
Also on inside the PDF of the land use plan that he sent today,
Yep, yeah, it's in there as well.
like page 14.
So while you're looking, Lisa, Sherry, you have a question or a statement, and you got to unmute. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, thank you. I actually do. I saw some interesting news about legislation that the state's looking to try to get passed through Senate that would actually override a lot of the work that we're doing. How are we going to combat that? And how are we going to make sure that we keep our rural areas protected? And I don't know that this is the conversation for the comp plan. But I mean, I think we need to tie it in.
Yes, so I'll give you the nickel answer instead of the quarter answer, but there is a land use commission that works with the legislature that is made up of a number of different entities throughout the state, like the League of Cities and Towns, some planners, some zoning members, developers, legislators. And that group, as I'm learning more about it, is they're a key commission of the governor that makes recommendations for changes to planning, zoning, land use related legislation. They are doing a lot of work that I think is going to be focused on Julie's side of the world, which is affordable housing. They'll probably tweak the accessory dwelling unit legislation. They're going to do some other affordable housing stuff because the governor was pretty blatant in his budget address when he talked about affordable housing and that Rhode Island is 50th in the union in terms of the provision of affordable housing for what we need. But there are other things that are coming out that may be a little bit scary for land use. So that group is being monitored, at least by my peers, through the Rhode Island American chapter of the American Planning Association, to look at that. And I'm sure that bills have already started to roll out in the legislature that are affecting land use and related elements of land use. As those things are, either I pick up some of that stuff and work with my counterparts, or it's picked up on and talked about in the town here with either the town council, town manager, you as a group. That needs to occur and needs to occur on an ongoing basis as need be. I know the way legislators work, it's usually like hurry up and wait, or when you're not there, they pass something. So you really do have to go off to the legislative webpage every single day, see what bills are being introduced, look at the committee agendas. If you have in your particular world, each of you in your particular worlds, have somebody that stakes out the legislature as an advocate or a lobbyist, it'll be good to stay in touch with them and sort of ask the questions. Hey, if you see something coming across that looks to be affecting future land use in the state, please let me know what that bill number is, so that we can sort of mutually share that information. And as those bills come out, it's kind of, you have to be not only reactionary to those bills that come out, but also try to be proactive, either as a bill comes out or with those particular organizations like the League of Cities and Towns, the organization that I belong to, which is the chapter of the American Planning Association, so that the voice can be heard up there. Periodically, you know, if you have associations that you affiliate with, you'll get periodic, you know, sort of like legislative alerts that say, oh, such and such is putting a bill on the floor today, or in committee, it's going to move fast. You need to tell your constituents to, you know, flood the phones and the emails and all that sort of stuff. That often is another way of dealing with things. So that's just as short as I can make that kind of a response. It's kind of, you got to kind of get your feet wet and jump into it. And where you can bring colleagues along, do so. I can't really give you a better answer than that.
So all the work we're doing basically isn't going to protect it may not protect it. If the state passes it, state trumps town, we know this. They'll say, you got to do this. And we may end up losing areas that we don't want to.
That's the concern. Now, when the governor, again, as part of his budget delivery address, spoke to the state land use plan and said, it's out there, we need to adhere to it. He was kind of couching it with affordable housing at the same time frame, but he's basically saying that it's out there. There's going to be some stuff that we need to do to implement that plan. So it's clear that, you know, when a governor mentions something like that, it means that it's high up on the totem pole with regard to his, you know, division chiefs or heads or whatever, and that they're going to deal with some stuff. So that is the document for the state in terms of its vision, goals, and policies. And we need to pay attention to what's in that, as they may push out some legislation and stuff that may be either controversial or contradictory to our particular plan. There is statutory language that allows for the lack or the lack of conformity between the two. See, we're required to be in conformance with the state plan, but there are, if we feel as a town that we want to continue something that's on our map that happens to be not in conformance with the state plan, as long as we essentially identify it through some textual stuff, we can continue to have that. We can defend ourselves in that so that it can stay in our plan. But as we see those things, that may be somewhat serious in context, we ought to probably highlight those in the text of the plan, or at least in some kind of an adopting document that is sort of a letter of transmittal from us to the state to say, this is our plan, this is what we're adopting. We've worked our best to be in conformity with the state plan, but we feel in these particular areas, the inconformity or lack of conformity needs to continue because of these important local issues, A, B, C, D, E. Is that making sense to everybody?
Yeah, I think we just need to make sure that we're very careful about that, because there is a lot of legislation that is being pressed with the land use. I know the governor is a stickler for that. He is a strong supporter of affordable housing. He has been instrumental in ensuring that our veterans get the housing units that they needed. He's supported through all of that. So I know that is a huge thing on his plate that he is looking at. And I do know for a fact that legislation is coming down the line. And that's my concern, is I want to make sure that the areas that need to be protected are.
Yep. And that makes perfect sense. And I think the good side of this, just to take a higher level approach, is that typically the Democratic Party is very supportive of planning and planning efforts. And so usually you can find some good advocates in that, and that being the controlling party in the state can be helpful in terms of those sorts of things. In other words, I think that there's always an ear to lend to your voice that can understand that. So as we do run into those things, I think at least from a political philosophy side of things, it's easier than, say, if any other party was in control, you would probably find it a much less open ear to some of the changes, and it would probably even be more of a tops-down approach to really focused on business and that aspect of things. But so at least there's sort of that moderate perspective that I think is in the state. But I do think that there is truly a real aim to focus on affordable housing this legislative session. And that's going to relate directly to future land use. Absolutely.
And not only her is the state so high on it right now, and the dollars that the state has, but HUD's now come back with their proposed rule on affirmatively furthering fair housing,
Right.
which we're gonna do, the planning department's gonna have to accomplish again, and so are we. I think that's out for public comment for the next 90 days, but that's also huge, and that's all about your land use as well, so.
Yep.
But we hopefully will have this done before that rule actually gets published, and or simultaneously, so we can feed right off of that.
Yeah, yeah, and for those that don't know what we're talking about, Julie's got to put together her kind of 5-year plan, at least for capital thinking and all that, and what we're trying to do is to make sure. I think actually, isn't there a requirement that it's got to be factored in with a comp plan or something? But at least we're making sure that the two plans are going to jive with one another in a particular process, whether that's sucking Julie's stuff in as an appendix or some kind of verbiage that aligns the two, because I think that's important. Yeah, absolutely. And again, the affordable housing thing, by taking the forefront, is I'm sure there's going to be analysis and stuff out there that's going to say that we need to update our housing production plan as well, which I see as a technique to implement the comp plan once it's adopted. There's some basic stuff in the housing element, but there was that whole separate analysis that was done, 5-8 years ago, the latest update, whatever it is, that needs to be updated again. And I think that's a critical piece that will play into because I'm sure the governor is going to be, and his staff are going to be doing a similar thing in their housing production analysis. And I am the type that is always says, if we've got to do something, I would rather that we put something together that shows it, and then see how that compares or not with the state. But it so that as long as we have our local needs and goals and objectives in there, it's easier to argue, for lack of a better term, with state officials in terms of what's right for Coventry, what's appropriate for Coventry, and where should it go in Coventry, rather than it just being, if we don't do it, then the state comes in and says, here's your number and here's what you need to do, and we're not going to give you certain money unless you do it. That's always what I get afraid of. I like to make sure that we have our plan, and we try to work with the state in terms of that, but we feel comfortable in what we put forward, and therefore then it's easier to look at allocation of funds or programs or sticks that are, I would hope the state would use carrots rather than sticks, but they may be getting to some sticks in the near future with this. It's tough for a governor to be, going to a governor's conference, national governor's conference, and say he's 50th in the union with regard to provision of affordable housing. Anything else related to that, or any other topic that we did? Lisa, did you find the map before I forget?
I did. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else from that standpoint that we want to focus on? I will say a little bit to Bob's question that I think, Bob, a lot of the development of this local map was probably highly influenced by both the state future land use map, obviously why there's a big honking red line in the middle of it. The state is basically saying the eastern side of the state is the growth center, the western side of the state is the area to protect. That's effectively what that big honking red line says. So I'm sure that there's a lot of influence of the state in terms of this map. Obviously, the existing, the former future land use map and the current zoning had a big play into this. Clearly, comments that have been received throughout the planning process have been influenced in here. But I can't give you details like you raised that said, well, how come this particular area has this versus that, even though I mentioned, you know, that you said that you had some comments. So I get that, but I think those are probably the three key areas as to how this was developed. Again, the state future land use map, the town's now expired future land use map, and then comments that we've received through the process along with the zoning map. Anything, or am I, you know, we don't have the full group here, so I know it's trying to pull teeth right now.
All right, well, I guess that leads to kind of my other question that's been nagging, which is, and I don't know if any other members are in the same boat, but we make comments and we look to see if the comments are incorporated, but there's never an answer to our comment to see what the reviewers thought of the comment and how they implemented it or why they didn't.
Yeah, I can say that I know that they've considered all of the betas, considering all the comments that are going in. Just even today, as a for instance, Emily was asking if there are any updated comments off the webpage. There were a bunch, but it all related to the hate of Coventry crossings. So there was a glut of them from November. So I know that they've considered all of them. I don't know how, I can't answer directly how they have. I've had some discussions with Emily over time, but I've also given them time in the last couple of months. They've taken the time to kind of pull things together. So they needed to essentially sit in the corner for a little bit, take the information that they had to develop the 190-page document that I forwarded to you earlier today. So I think that your question is timely, because now that they've had their opportunity to sit in the corner and really kind of pull the main thing together, if there are those relevant situations like, well, I don't see my, you know, I made this comment, I don't fully understand why it wasn't factored into this. I'm sure it was considered, but I don't know, I don't have the answer for you in terms of the why it wasn't, you know, sort of that side of it. And I will share that with Emily so that I don't think she's going to come back with the specificity that you're looking for, just because an individual comment, you know, may get lost in the larger thing, or that there was a preponderance of other comments that push something in a certain direction. It's never an easy answer to find, but if I can get her to generally respond to stuff, as you saw from the other, in the same packet that delivered the future land use map, you can see all of the comments that were provided through that visioning, goal, and policy process. I'm sure you can imagine it's difficult to have a specific answer for every single one in terms of it. My guess is that Emily, and again, I'm guessing, and I apologize if it's coming across as just wordsmith, or I'm not trying to give you lip service, in that there was probably a level of preponderance of certain comments that made it easy to make some changes or add some stuff to the plan, or to defend something that was already in there, versus some specific comments that might not have been as easy to address. So I'll have to let Emily answer that, and I'll certainly share that with her. And also, you're welcome, as you know, to email directly with Emily and ask that particular question. But I'll try to get that information to her so that she might take some time to reply to that.
I
If
think
you,
I see a lot of common themes in all of the comments, and that's the kind of census I was getting going over these last. If you look at all the comments, the ones that have come, we got a bunch a couple of days ago and a bunch more and a bunch more, a couple of months ago, but everything is about preservation and open space, recreation. There's common themes throughout them. So that's kind of what I've been keeping to my side for my guide. So when I see new drafts coming out from Beta or something, or comments from the state, I want to make sure those are kind of in line to this consensus that seems to be, recreation, historic Tyoke Avenue. Like if we're not seeing some bold statements in our goals in those areas, then I'll have a couple of questions,
Sure.
So that's why I'm looking forward to reading the draft. I just didn't have time to read the whole thing today, sorry.
Why not? Yeah, no, I get
But
that. And I
that's what I'm hoping, Bob, that the overall, like we had these comments, but here are these overall themes in all of these comments, putting them together, so.
Right.
Well,
And
I hear it, and I mean, it all sounds good, but we could redline a document 10 times faster and make the same comments, but we're, putting together, the equivalent of Excel file with detailed comments, with a lot of cross-referencing and spending a lot of time with the words. And it would be nice to see an answer.
I hear you, and I'll try to emphasize that to Emily to see if we can't get some answers from that, at least some, for lack of a better term, maybe some assumptions as to how they got where they're at. That might be able to answer it in the reciprocal, so to speak.
And I don't know about anyone else in the room, but one of my comments was, why are we, 5 acres doesn't seem to be working on the western end of town. And initially I was thinking maybe it was time to slip it towards 6 or 7 acres. But I think my final comment was to actually make the jump to 10 acres for zoning. And I don't know what anyone else thinks about that, but something's got to be done, something's got to change. And that was the one conclusion that I've come to, and be interesting to see what anyone else thinks about that as a way to preserve some space.
Well,
Yeah,
I think you're gonna fall into the same problem you fall into regularly. Like, yeah, I can have 10 acres and I can be zoned rural residential with 10 acres. But
Put a solar farm.
I can still put in a solar farm. I can still do the other things that have been done in our community. So we need to find better wording, not just saying, well, let's increase the acreage that has to be held accountable. I think we also need to make sure that we're labeling solar energy for what it is. It is industrial. It does not belong in a rural area. So I think we need to look at those things as well and make sure that that's being listed out. I definitely agree that increasing it to 10 acres would make it better, but still, if you have a 30-acre lot and you have 10 acres, you can still split that up to make 3 more housing lots. And if the state comes down and does what they want to do, it doesn't matter if you have a 10-acre lot. They're going to take that 10-acre lot and they're going to turn it into not condominiums, but apartment houses and low-income housing for the low income. That's what they're talking about. So even by doing that, I'm not sure that we're fully protecting the area. And I'm sorry, but that's just my 2 cents.
No, that's good. I think the key point to point out is that Bob is offering, that's one method of trying to help protect the areas that we want to protect. And it's not necessarily the panacea, but it's one option that's available to the community, and that's to raise the minimum acreage size for a parcel, so that you're minimizing what can go on that particular parcel in terms of, I'm talking about, evil development stuff, right? Not saying development's evil, but just to get in the context of the discussion. There are other things like, the land trust is trying to find parcels. So I think the town needs to go through an exercise. It might even be hiring a consultant after we get the town plan done to say, what are the land use techniques? What are the things that we can do? Let's do a true inventory of our properties that are out there. Let's use Lynn and Larry and their GIS expertise to kind of, to put a set of overlays together that basically can say, well, we already know this is, you know, type 2 wetlands. This is already steep slopes. This is already soils that just can't handle any kind of a septic system. So maybe we can generally, for the beginning part, rule those out. But then on the other areas where it's prime ag soil, which means it's really good for septic, not only agriculture, it's good for development from that standpoint, and allows us to focus on those areas to say, okay, Conservation Commission, okay, Land Trust, here are the areas that are when we take out all the bad areas for development related, like poor soils, of these parcels, which are the ones that are really most important to protect, conserve, or, you know, otherwise protect from development. And then on the, but to add to the corollary to that, because I have to also speak to, you know, proper economic development, affordable housing and stuff, what might be the areas that are reasonable to think about for some development. And that's partially, you know, that big fat red line on the map. That's really, if you take it at the state level, they basically said, hey, this side of Coventry is really the area that we want to focus development on. And the other side of that line is the area we want to kind of protect for conservation and open space. So they've done it at their level, right? Which is a much broader level. We want to ask the same question, but we're going to take it to the town level, not just a state level. And maybe that red line's got to move in, maybe it's got to move out. But then we also, just like Bob is talking about, we've got to look at some of the specific parcels and what we really want to do with them. So I think there are a couple other exercises we can go through and other public forum processes where we can really try to decide, you know, we can be the dog instead of the tail being wagged by the dog in terms of what we're going through. But we do have to do it in a balanced approach. We have to be cognizant that we're talking about people's property. If say it was an active farm, we're talking about a farmer's retirement because the retirement is in their land, it's not in their bank account. If somebody wants to, you know, people have the right to develop their property under the regulations that are there. If you change the regulations, fine, but that process also is going to, you know, we should be looking at, are there methods of if we're going to take someone's property and put it in open space, can we effectively do it through a land trust where they're going to get some fair market value for their property to keep it out of development, and that sort of thing. So we want to be careful about not trying to make ourselves the government of takings, and that we are involving the property owners as part of the discussion. So Bob does raise a great, you know, that's one option, but I think that there are some other discussions and options that are out there for the town to consider besides just making people have bigger parcels of land for development, or not for development, or for development. Other ideas?
So now on those bigger parcels, so if we were to say that we wanted to up it to 10 acres,
Mhm.
in fairness, that wouldn't be reflected in the plan because that is a zoning change. So we would have to actually approach zoning. It would have to be a townwide affair where everyone in the town is in agreement. Is that correct? Like,
No,
how
you
would that
start,
process
no, I
work?
mean, zoning is clearly where the feet are going to hit the pavement, but in order to make that kind of a zoning change, you really do need to involve that in the town plan process. So you should be having text and or maps within your town plan that says, you know, the direction we're concerned about. The further west you go in Coventry, the need to protect and conserve areas from that standpoint to maintain that rural heritage. To do that, we feel that we need to have we need to go back to a sort of a farm style size of acreage, no less than 10 acres. And that's the kind of language that you really do want to have in the town plan, because that gives you the fodder, it gives you the energy, it gives you the defense for going and making the zoning change after the town plan is adopted.
Okay, so then that probably, I mean, honestly and truthfully, I think with the bigger parcels of land that are out here, I think we should probably look at that and see if that's a possibility to include that language, because there are, you have, the tree, it's not a tree farm, but where they were just doing all the logging and stuff right down the road. That's a huge parcel of land. I believe it's 150, I'm not sure, don't quote me. I think it's 150 acres or something like that.
Mhm.
Like, maybe looking at taking those parcels and saying, okay, well, since these are such large parcels, like right now, like think about how much damage if we broke that down into 5 acre lots. That would do a lot of damage out here. So maybe looking at those, or maybe even looking at some of those and saying, okay, well, maybe this is such a large piece, do we want to even go higher than the 10? I think 10 is reasonable. I think 10 acres would definitely leave some nice green coverage, but maybe that is something that we definitely want to make sure is in here. And I haven't gone through the draft yet to see if it is. So if it is, Emily, I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to read through this yet.
Lynn and I with Larry we're doing, trying to get it going. We should have it done by the end of the week, is get a collaboration between our two different GIS systems. And just like what you're mentioning, to me, it's a simple data layer to create, because we already have the parcel data, and you can basically say what part you can just have a two colored map where you basically say make all the green ones that are currently 10 acres or larger, and then pick another color, and it's for everything that's less than 10 acres. So you could immediately see what parcels potentially are affected, or put it in a level of context. And then of course there's all different kinds of sophisticated data layers that we can do in addition to something like that. But exactly what you guys are raising can be a real cool GIS exercise. And I know Lynn's listening to this. I know Larry's been, Lynn's in my left ear, Larry's in my right ear, in terms of trying to, they're offering their services and their expertise in terms of the GIS. And these are the kind of things that they drool over. I think, yeah, I think we can work on some of that stuff, and even if we can't do the full thing, like say, I really want to have a build out done with regard to our existing zoning, so that people can say, hey, under our existing zoning, here's really what potentially could come down the road. And I want to do that for some of our wastewater analysis, but it's pretty eye-opening to do so. And we talked about this at the last meeting. But there's a lot of things that we can do, I think, that will get at being able to help to defend. We keep talking about the protection of Western Coventry. Well, once we have, I think, some of these data layers together, we're going to start to flesh out, which parcels are going to be, maybe a higher priority than others. And then we can work from there to figure out what's the best way to protect those, whether it's a zoning thing, or the Land Trust and Conservation Commission working together. Is it, the town, if we're going to do these things, they need to build a reserve fund in order to purchase property that they can't otherwise get some control over, or at least leverage some grant funds that may be out there, some national land trust funds, land and water conservation trust funds, that sort of stuff. And work with property owners. I know there are people out in Coventry that probably are willing to, put some open space easements on their property, even though they may not really necessarily get some money for it. They're willing to do it because they already have some money. Anyway, Lynn, please, I'm talking too much.
Just to note along those lines, the Land Trust is currently, one of the things that we have on our agenda in the next couple of months is to start to inventory the properties for just these kinds of things. We have a scoring sheet that we use to sort of figure out what properties we want to, quote, go after.
Nice.
But we don't really have we don't have a budget per se to just go out and buy land. So we have to wait for a property owner to come to us. So anyway, these things are on our list of things to do. And, the other thing that we want to do is try and get more PR out there to let the people in the town know that we're there and that they can talk to us about giving us development rights and ceding those things over to us. So Anyway, I just want to mention that we're working on it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention in the chat, I don't know if you could all see it in the chat, but Julie had to leave early, so she sends her apologies on that. That's great. Go ahead, Bob.
Well,
Thank you, Lynn.
just to give everybody some history, back in 2000, the 2000 plan has a build out analysis. And part of that weighed into what was done, and the 2000 plan recommended different zoning. And that's where the 5-acre zone and the now 3-acre zone, which was increased from, I believe, 2 at the time, all grew from, so that the 5 got bigger, the 2 became 3. I think that the area of 3 also grew even out of farther than what was the old 2-acre boundary. So the plan was the basis for all of that to happen. And just to be careful with what I've just heard as a discussion, if you're looking and targeting parcels, aren't you kind of going into something that would be spot zoning rather than general zoning, which it would be, you know, more focusing on, say, the western end and what is the 2 or 3-acre zone or 5-acre zone and increasing it, but this not going after parcels and doing spot zoning?
Right. Certainly from my standpoint, what the Woods Estate has proposed for zoning with regard to the tree parcel out at Harkney Hill and Nooseneck, that's the equivalent of spot zoning. It's the equivalent of a taking. And they're trying to couch it a little bit in saying that we need this new district and we need to apply it across the town. But its real intent is to, you know, kill a project, not necessarily to do something. But there are some well-intentioned folks that really do want to have that zoning district. So there is good intention behind the general opposition to that particular project. For from my perspective, I'm not promoting a level of spot zoning, but rather trying to go through an exercise of figuring out what might be priority parcels, that because the land trust can't purchase, for instance, they can't purchase every parcel that the town may want to protect. They've got to go through their exercise to determine what are the priorities in the community. And that's done with, you know, probably Conservation Commission as well, the town plan, the state plan, and then they basically can funnel things down because they're only going to have a certain amount of money to do a certain amount of parcels. And so it's key to find those parcels that they really want to identify and protect. So that's really, it's more of a protection exercise than it is creating spot zoning. The proposed zoning amendment for Coventry Crossings, that's really a form of a spot zoning situation. It's just it's the antithesis of what most people do. Most spot zoning is, you know, there's an industrial development that wants to come into town. Everybody under the sun wants to have it come into town. It's going to do the tax base. It's going to lower our taxes, blah, blah, blah. So you purposely do change to a particular parcel to accommodate that new development or that business coming into town. That's really where it comes about. The Coventry Crossings proposal is sort of, again, is the opposite of that, but it still is a form of zoning. It's trying not to allow development to come in, and you're targeting a specific parcel to do something.
And it was spot zoned originally for a Kmart.
Yes, I understand. Yep. And they're clearly the method, you know, I don't like the method that this town uses and how it's changed zoning over the years. And that is, a lot of times there's a development application that comes in the door and they jointly need some kind of a zoning amendment or a form of relief or what have you. And it runs on a parallel course with itself, so that by the time the development gets approved, the zoning has gone through at the same time frame. The way zoning is supposed to change, you're supposed to do your plan, change your zoning, you implement it through, and developers do things based on what your zoning says. If they need to have a zoning change to do what they need to do, well, typically it's got to go through a zoning amendment and all that, rather than in a separate process, not in parallel with a development proposal on the table. But Coventry does things funnier than most planners. I hope to change some of that. I mean, in some instances that, that can be good if there's an overall town-wide perspective and the zoning change is occurring based on that. But the parcel to parcel individual application, again, it's the tail wagging the dog, not the dog wagging the tail. Sherry.
Dumb question. I'm not up on all of the zoning in the town, so bear with me. I know we have the RR5 zoning. Are there, in the lower part of town, do we have any of these open spaces, like any of this green area? None of that is RR5, correct? Because it's not in the rural, because it's not out in Western.
Well, on the map, there's a ton of green areas that are in Western Coventry. Actually, predominantly Western Coventry is in green.
No, I'm talking about in Eastern Coventry. I'm talking about the other side of Coventry, our bigger part is, we've got a bunch of parcels here that are preserved as open space, so on and so forth, or
Right.
that are showing up as open space.
Okay.
So now, when the zoning was changed to Western, I understand that it was for rural residential. But however, some of these lots, I'm quite certain are bigger than 5 acres. Why wasn't
there's a
the
ton of-
zoning across the board,
Yeah,
is
there's
what
a
I'm trying to
ton-
figure out.
On the bottom half of the future land use map over on the eastern side, the main green bulks that are there are the Kent County Water Authority and the Rhode Island, state of Rhode Island, and it relates to watershed related stuff. Those are the biggest ones down
Oh,
that
Okay,
sort of like,
okay.
there's 2 green blobs on either side of the red line. That's the ones on the right side of that line is Kent County Water Authority. And on the left side of that red line is the state of Rhode Island. And I can't remember what it's called, if that's the big river or what have you, but that whole thing was to protect that critical watershed. And then there are some, and then as you get into the, where the more orange is, you can see some significant patches of green. In a lot of instances, it's the school system parcels and some other open space parcels that are there. But obviously, the smaller it goes, the more my brain is not working. But there are some significant open space parcels that are either protected or are school properties, the parks and rec spaces, that sort of thing.
Couple of them are land trust properties.
Yep.
With conservation.
Okay, so they are protected.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, you'll find the further you get east where there's a defined parcel, it's probably in some kind of conservation already of some degree.
I
or
see
the-
one on the,
Go ahead,
Well-
Lisa.
I see one on the southeast corner of Tioga Lake. There's a green parcel. Lynn, do you know what that open space is?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can look it up pretty quick.
I'm trying to beat you to it, but.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing
It could be like Briar Point Beach or something that a
Right.
town property.
No, it's not. No, that's the wrong location for Briar Point. I have a feeling it's privately owned property, but
Yeah. Well, and that's the part of the thing too. One of those green blobs, I think, is the former landfill that isn't really quote open space anymore, but it's shown as green on here because it's clearly not going to be developed, I guess.
the
The former landfill is going to have
Lynn,
solar on it.
and that's not one of those green parcels.
Okay.
The one I'm looking at, I think, is probably
I'm almost there.
East Shore Drive or,
This one, the Paul and Deborah Turilli off of Tiffany Road owns, I think, one of the parcels you're talking about.
that
Lisa.
sounds right. Okay,
And
so that's a
then-
privately owned parcel.
Yep, and then immediately underneath that one is. Sorry, just trying to get the right parcel, is Clifford Teft. Is that, if that's the right pronunciation? That's the one that's, there's the two that are right underneath Tioga Lake. One, the triangular one is the Teft property, Clifford Teft.
Yeah,
And then the other one was, I can't remember what the name I said. The other one was.
Torelli.
Torelli,
said,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So those are just privately owned parcels of land as far as I know.
I agree, unless for some reason they've agreed to, maybe part of their properties are in the state's farm and forest, what do you call it? Sorry, I'm used to calling it something different up in Vermont, the farm and forest program.
Yeah, it's a farm forest, open
Yeah,
space.
I'm used to calling it current use.
Yeah.
So just because of the size of the parcel, that would make sense to me that they put part of their parcel in that so that they're not taxed at highest and best use for residential.
Right.
And then the other one that's kind of linear.
That's coming off of Tioga Avenue. Is that-
Yeah,
It's like a,
that looks like Andrea Roach's property. Oh, whoops, no, sorry, wrong one. Oh, that's Minglewood. That's D2 Homes. So that one's
that's
gone.
not open space,
Yeah,
right?
no, there is protected open space there, but that's
That's being
it's two
developed right
parcels.
now.
That's what is it? East Oaks at East Shore. What? Anyway, it's Bob DuBois. Yeah. Yeah. So that one's gone to development.
So how do you change that on the map?
Well,
Or
right.
so
I
that's-
take my pen like I'm doing right now, and I write a
you
note
color it
for
Oh.
Emily to change that. So yeah.
And there's one that's owned by Red Brook Meadow on the very, very eastern border.
Of what? Oh, way over there. I got you. Yeah.
It's the last green property on the southeast edge of town. It's
Yeah.
owned by Red Brook Meadow.
Yeah.
Where is that located, Lynn?
If you look at, looking at the
I
map,
see it on the map. I'm just trying to envision it.
yeah,
Englewood. It's Englewood, where Englewood Road is. Trying to give you a landmark. There's access to it off of what is that, Main Street? Oh, that's developed. Yeah, that's you know what that is? That is the dedicated open space for that subdivision, which is Englewood Road, Kennedy Drive, Cypress Road, Deerfield Road. So if you,
Okay,
yep. So because now I know that one intimately because there was a proposed zoning change up on Main Street, right? Or excuse me, on Tioga, just before it goes into West Warwick, that they were trying to change the zoning. And those were that's the abutting neighborhood. So that's all protected in open space from that development.
okay.
Yeah. So we're good on leaving that, I don't have to mark that one, but clearly Bob DuBois's development, that one's gone to development, even though there's
Yeah.
dedicated there is open space in there, but I would make it orange at this point.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Well, that's good stuff. So. Sorry, I'm not paying attention. Anything else? It's about 6:20. If everyone's good, we can kind of end early. We're Or let me just, I just want to make sure I'm not missing something in Emily's narrative agenda.
I have one question.
Yeah, please.
And I apologize if this was covered in the email, but I'm wondering what the time frame is for seeing the policies and recommendations, so that we have a chance to review those. Because those are,
I think those are in the draft that I gave you. I think anything, but I haven't specifically gotten totally into that document. I just quickly looked at it. But I
Okay.
thought, based on what Emily said, all of that information's in there.
I guess I was looking at the last chapter there at the very end, and it's all ipsum lorem text.
Oh, okay.
Implementation. Maybe
Oh.
they're interspersed into the chapters, and I just didn't see them yet.
Okay. I will, either feel free to share an email with Emily on that, or I'll try to share that with her as well.
Okay. I guess maybe that last set is supposed to be a summary of the recommendations, but
Yeah, my idea was that we should have all of that important stuff, for lack of a better term. I want it up front so that you immediately just get it. And then the rest of the plan sort of helps support that, or it's just like a big executive summary. And maybe she just hasn't done that yet, but she does say they're producing a draft to share with a committee that will illustrate the plan format and outline and include the chapters, vision, goals, appendices, and more. I think what I delivered to you today effectively is that. They're going to start. So for our next committee meeting, we're going to get into the draft of the implementation plan. So we're going to be kind of jumping from goals and policies and getting to the part that everybody likes to talk about first, which is how to implement the plan, the how to. And then the public meeting number 3, which is March 7th. So you can mark your calendars for that. We're going to use that public meeting to try to get the public to talk about implementation. So is your next, is it your last one? Sorry, I'm trying to find it on the, hold on. So yeah, oh, no, you won't. So so after tonight, the next meeting that we'll have is the public meeting on March 7th. And then there's an advisory meeting after that, which will be your last one, unless we schedule one. Emily and I may have talked about having some kind of an advisory committee meeting in advance of the public meeting, since we're going to be focused on implementation. And I think she probably wants to get some level of input from you guys before we get into that public meeting. I can't remember if I had that discussion with Emily yet, or I need to have that, but that was something that I know they need time to do their drafting and all that, but it seems that you as a group should meet before we get into that public meeting, at least for logistics for that meeting. So even though that's not on the calendar, just be wary that we may be asking you guys for some time.
It's March 7th and etched in stone, because I'm not going to be able to make that one.
I believe that it is, well, I'll say certainly wet concrete.
In person, or is it in person or Zooming?
The original plan was for it to be a Zoom meeting. Personally, I would rather have it be an in-person meeting. I think our last public meeting was a disaster at best. Maybe there's a way that we can do it both maybe it can be both in person and Zoom, where maybe the Zoom attendees, if we have to do a breakout session, we can do breakout sessions with Zoom. But I'll have to talk to Emily about that. Again, originally it was supposed to be all remote. I would rather have it be in person though.
Yeah,
It should be
based on the attendance when we had it at the senior center there. The first one was good. And then the one over Zoom was
Yeah,
just awful.
yes, it was. It was terrible. And I mean, I made Emily act fast to convert all of that process into the equivalent of a survey, and we got it out. And then there were some folks in town, including the counselors and you folks, that worked hard to get people to respond. And I think we had like, it wasn't great. I mean, we had like 75 responses, but that 75 responses was a lot better than the 2 or 3 people besides you folks that showed up at the public forum. So I really think that an in-person meeting is due. I think that you know, we'll have some bones of a plan that people will be looking at. So there'll be, you know, something physical to hold on to and look at. And I don't want to repeat public meeting number 2. So so I think I will encourage Emily to work in that direction. I just have to be, you folks should then, if we do that, and I know Bob, you said you probably won't be able to make March 7th, but you folks should be prepared to help in being facilitators or whatever, because Emily will be, you know, probably at the tail end of her contract from that standpoint, and that she won't be able to bring in all the staff that she had before. Sherry.
Question for you quick. Are we going to be able to, do we have funding so that we can get some flyers so that we can distribute them? I mean, I will go door to door. I'm not afraid. I've done it before. It's not a big deal to me. And literally hand deliver these things to get people out there. Is there some way that is there any funds available anywhere to get this message out there and get a better response than we've been getting?
Right. I mean, we're going to have to band together on that. I mean, we already have the artistic work of Lynn from public meeting number 2 that she did, which I think is, you know, when we get into talking about sort of plan, logo, or branding, I'd love to just say, let's just all agree to use Lynn's work because it was really cool what she did when we were thinking that we could do some kind of a postcard mailer last time. When I went in, I was absolutely overwhelmed with the cost for what it would be just to send out a postcard reminder to all households. You know, just as a bulk permit type stuff, it was overwhelming, and so, and especially with a budget that had just failed shortly before that, that was not a good idea. So if we can do some flyers that use sort of that artwork, you know, I clearly can use some of my budget to create some of that stuff, whether that's some poster boards to go around town in the various, you know, places where we stop, like the post office, the green store, whatever it might be. And then we can, I know Lynn basically has already done it. I just need to go in, you know, we just need to go in and change the date and all that sort of stuff, that we can create that. And I certainly can run off. I can even run it in-house here. If not, just send it to Staples or whomever to just run a ream of flyers or something that we could get around town. But the mailing is going to be problematic. I don't have a budget to do that kind of a thing.
Well,
No, I understand that mailing might not be an option, but I mean, if we're able to tap into enough people that have voiced their concerns recently, and also have those people handing out flyers to their neighbors, to their friends, you know, that in itself, word of mouth, just kind of trying to spread it that way might be helpful. The other option is there any way we can get a PSA through the school system? Because every parent that has a child gets that notification.
Right. Yeah, I used to do that when I was chair of a school board. I'd allow the town to do stuff like that. It's really a function of the school and what they'll allow through there, because I do believe in child labor when it comes to delivering, you know, at least get the flyers in the backpacks. Whether it gets home with the backpacks, a different story. But I have worked with school districts to be able to do that, where at least a flyer can get in there, and then, you know, get some in the library. the March unfortunately is not tax season, but I've done flyers like that stuffed in with tax bills when they go out the door. So at least you hit all the households or those that pay taxes. So I think there are some things, there's definitely some stuff that we can do that is a far cry from to minimize happening what did for meeting number 2.
Can we have a meeting sometime after the end of June, and maybe Billy Gilman can make an announcement to everybody?
Yeah. We're gonna, the key is this, what I keep reminding myself is that, Beta is supposed to give its deliverable essentially in the May timeframe. I wouldn't be surprised if it slips into June, but their deliverable essentially is a camera-ready plan for public hearing. It's not the adopted plan. So their deliverable is to give us a plan that has gone through the state process that's ready to go to public hearing. So what's going to happen? So my life is going to change in May because I'm going to have to take on the responsibility of walking it through the planning commission, walking it through the public hearing process with the town council, making whatever changes may be necessary from that standpoint, unless the town council is kind and is willing to do an additional contract with Beta afterward to help us go through that process. But that's where I may ask you, so even though your last meeting, at least in the calendar, is March 28th, I may ask you folks to stay on as goodwill ambassadors to help walk this through the various boards, to come in and be an advocate for it and indicate that what we did through the process. So in other words, again, Beta does not walk us through the public hearing or the adoption process. That's going to be us. It's going to be me, but I would love to have some help along the way to help walk it through. And that's always been the scope of work. That's no different than from day one.
And if we
Well,
get
I
it
can
that
see
far, let's
incoming.
push it the rest of the way.
Great. We're going to be optimistic, Bob. We're not going to let this drop like 2010. So yeah, we really want to carry this to the finish line. But I think Beta will get us, you can already see, I think, so even just the format that the plan is going to be in is going to be, more than what was it, the past plan was a lot of black and white pages. Yes, it had maps and stuff, but we're going to have some color in this. There's going to be some, kind of a picture and all that. And that's a little bit of what Emily's trying to get at with regard to plan logo or branding and some of the marketing production aspect of the particular plan, how we might want to look at it. And so that we have it that looks good, and that will, I'm not saying that again that's going to be the thing that will carry us through, but I think having a little bit of color, a little bit of difference from just a black and white thick document with a binder on it will be helpful, to make the difference between a B+ grade to an A-, right? It'll help us get there.
Well,
Is
I
there-
can definitely say,
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's fine. I can definitely say if you need assistance in the further process, you have my number. Feel free to reach out. I will definitely, I want to see this down to the last wire and even follow it then afterwards.
Yep. Yeah, with the day that it's adopted is not going to be the day that we all stop doing our work, right? That's just the first day of the rest day of our lives. I do know that Emily, if there's anybody that really wants to sort of help put a public face on this, be project champion, that's what I had just spoken to about saying, I'd love to have your assistance as we get this off into the public and be the people that are sort of helping the town council understand it and move it through the process. Also, if there's anybody that believes that they're a strong creative writer that wants to, help in taking some of the ownership of this as we move forward. I know Sherry's there. I'm, generally speaking, I know that the general attendees of this group will continue forward, whether that's as a writer or sharing pamphlets or standing up in a meeting or something like that. I know that each of you has a different expertise that I can rely on from that standpoint. But I also understand that, you know, you've been at it for a little bit of time. If you feel you need to step away from something and let somebody else step up, I get that as well. So if there is that kind of interest among anybody, I already, you know, Lynn already I'm already volunteering Lynn because of her skills in marketing and GIS and that stuff. So she doesn't have a choice, but yeah.
In graphics at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Help me. And I'm not a writer though. I just don't have.
I
don't have-
get that. Yep. Yep.
I can probably help with the writing, but I would prefer to be more of a voice. I'm better at that. So wherever you need me, you place me.
Yep. Great. Thank you. I know I can be a writer, but you know, whether it's a creative writer, that's a different story. But anyway, so I think go ahead.
Larry will step up too in terms of you know, putting signs up and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Yeah, Larry, yeah. I know Larry's big on that, and I feel like I disappointed him for the last one, but because I thought I was going to be able to get a postcard out there, and he was actually really helpful in helping me coordinate with the post office, and I had all the information, and then realized that it was an exorbitant cost. So, but yeah, his work did not go unappreciated. So. And there's other expertise too that's out there, whether it's, you know, Julie, specific to you know, affordable housing, like each of you sort of represent a different kind of segment of the town or a different aspect of it. So that's all going to be really helpful at some point, even if it's just bringing stuff back to your committees or the people that you advocate with. I think I hit everything on the thing. Oh, I didn't answer Bob's question. Really, I think March 7th is probably pretty set at this point, Bob, but I can, I don't know how that date came about because I wasn't here when those dates were developed. It probably had something to do with the fact that that's probably one of the days when there isn't a committee meeting of some sort somewhere. But I'll check to see if I'll sort of look at the calendar and see if there's some alternative dates that we can look at. Is it just that date for you, Bob, or is it kind of that week or something that you can't make?
It's the stretch from February 25th for like 2 weeks that I'm incognito, shall we say.
Okay, so that's sort of the 7th is sort of the tail end of that 2 weeks.
It's February 25th. Yeah, it's in week 2 of my torture session.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Maybe we can try to do it the following week or something like that. But let me, if I don't have the whole committee here, but if there's a date, if there are dates that you can't do in that from say that the week of March 7th through the following week, if there are dates that you cannot do, let me know that.
Well, it would be better the week of March 12th period, right?
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. So all right, so let's just vote. So at least for now, yeah, let's just do that week. So for that week, if there are dates you cannot do, you know, shoot me an email. That's always an easier way to schedule something, in my opinion. I don't know what the other committees in town, when they meet, it might be a conservation commission or something, but I can always get the Conservation Commission just to defer their meeting to that public meeting, which means I get attendance at the public meeting. So, yeah.
We're talking an evening thing, like 7.
It'll be 6 to 8 type of thing.
And Harvey, you know, I am unavailable Mondays and Wednesdays due to the class I have to take for work.
Yep, just remind me in an email so that I know.
I will, I'll send
Yep,
that out to
yep.
you.
Yeah, I'm trying to stick March 7th as a Tuesday, I think, so.
Right, this
Yes.
meeting's not on the town calendar and there's nothing on the, during the whole next week on the town calendar.
Really?
Yeah, the week after that, the 21st is the land trust, the 22nd is planning, and the 23rd is the historic preservation commission. But there's nothing the week of the 12th right now.
So maybe what's happened is the software package that we use for the calendar, maybe people have put, maybe it's just time, the year is up and we got to put our next year's worth of stuff in there. I'll thank you for that. I'll although it looks like all the stuff's there for upcoming meetings, I'll double check.
Well, it's interesting, this meeting's not on it either, so.
Yeah, there's kind of a anything that's comprehensive plan related, it sort of got put under the comprehensive plan originally. And then normal, like town council, planning commission, land trust, those things tend to be on the normal town calendar. That's the only way I can describe what happened.
Understood.
Yeah, if I need 8 more hours in my day in order to do all the things that I need to do, so. But yeah, I gotta get that, so it's over there. Thank you. Okay, and just what I'll try to keep it on a Tuesday if I can for that following week, which would be the 14th. I think I conflict with one of the committees, but I'd chat with them and see if they couldn't either move their meeting or have their meeting as, just say, go to the town plan meeting.
About the town council meetings on Tuesday now?
Oh, yeah, shoot. You're right. And that would probably be, I think you're right, that the
I
14th
think
would
that's a
probably be a
town
town
council
council
meeting.
meeting. Yep. Yeah, thank you. I'm not into that calendar in my brain yet.
Well, it's interesting, they don't have their meetings on there either.
But
What do
regardless,
you want, Bob?
No, they're on there.
it's going to conflict with the 7th as well, if that's. the-
Actually, they're not, the town council's on the 7th and the 21st. So actually, I may have to move it anyway to the 14th, just because the town council's on the 7th. Yeah. Yeah, actually, it looks like it might work well for the 14th. So if you could just sort of pencil in your calendars to move this public meeting on the 14th.
And then you'll have to update the comprehensive plan page to change it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
See, the February council meetings are there, the March ones are not.
Yeah, and I know they did that on purpose because the January, February, they were waiting to sort of see if the Tuesdays worked for them. So they scheduled out to February, but then they waited.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if they it's hard. They're not. There's about 7 things that I have pending before them that need to either get on their calendar or whatever. And I'm in my frustration moment because we're still in a little bit of a weird, wacky time frame with an interim town manager and some of the Joanne, the town clerk has nothing to do with the agendas anymore. It's all done by the new town solicitor and to a degree, Hillary. So there's some change going on that's just trying to figure out the new processes.
The new politics in town.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll say it if you don't want to.
It's yeah, there's been quite a bit of change. I will say as a department head, there's some stuff that's really hard to figure out. There's a little bit of a lack of communication while they're trying to figure themselves out. And that makes my day a little difficult. So, but it's coming slowly but surely. And I think some of it is just because we're in the interim stage with Ed, and things will, I think, even out. The keel will get even once we get the permit, and whoever's going to be the next permanent town manager.
Please don't give up on us, Herb.
No, I'm having fun over here at the annex. I don't have to be over in the town offices across the way. I can hide over here a little bit. So poor
Okay.
Joanne can't. So I think I got through everything on the agenda. Last minute questions. We're at 6:45. And everybody's pets seem to be getting in everybody's laps. So
My pets are like, it's attention time. I'm so sorry. I apologize. My cat
No.
is in my face.
no, that's fine. The cats do that. I saw Bob's, the top of Bob's dog, and then I saw your puppy that's grown immensely since I last saw him.
Oh, she's
Sherry,
gotten
yep.
huge. Yeah, she literally came up and was like, "What are you doing? Can I play now too?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, down."
Yeah. Well, my senior citizen needs a lot of TLC, and I think she's only got a week or two left in her.
Oh,
Oh,
that's a hard time. Yeah.
She's really getting discombobulated, but there's no signs of suffering yet, but it looks like it might be right around the corner.
How old is she?
It'll be 15 in March.
Oh, that's a good, long, healthy age. So yeah. Anyway, all right. So thank you all for coming, sticking out for the whole thing. Again, right now on the calendar, the only thing is that the upcoming thing for this group is the public meeting. Keep your nose to the calendars, because obviously I think I have to change that. And it looks like I'll try to target the 14th. I may, in talking to Emily, I may try to schedule another advisory committee meeting before then, in case there's some logistical discussions that we need to have or help us decide on. If we do that, Bob, I'll try to do it, before you have your 2-week hiatus. No promises at this point, because I don't have Emily's calendar, nor do I have all of your calendars. But if we need to do that, I'll certainly reach out to all of you and try to get as many of you in the room as I can. And I'm sure it'll be a Zoom meeting. So.
And in the meantime, you sent us a bunch of stuff, so get ready for stuff to come bouncing back.
Please. Yes, I know. I admit I sent a lot of pages. So if you have comments, please have them come back. If you send stuff to me and it's sort of specific to the plan or suggestions, I would suggest copying Emily at the same time frame so she gets it as soon as she can, and then she and I can collaborate.
And until I know we're getting answers to our written comments, my next submittal may be just red lines.
Okay. Fair enough. I get it. Yeah, actually, at this point for a town plan, if you can do it in a red line format, that would be awesome. Meaning if you don't understand that, strike throughs and underlining being added text, straight throughs meaning get rid of it. That would be helpful. If it just has to be a question or something, I get that. Just try to make your question as understandable as possible.
But it's a lot easier to do that as a comment in line with the text than to try
Yes.
to, it's a lot more efficient time-wise to do that than to try to fill out the spreadsheet.
Yes. Yeah. At this point, thank you. Don't use the spreadsheet at this point. I would say do red line. If you're does everybody know how to do red line in a Word document? It's pretty easy to do.
Do we have the actual Word document? I thought we just got the PDF.
Was it just, oh yeah, you do have only a PDF. Yeah, because it never would have gotten to you, the PDF.
I mean, I have the ability to redline in a PDF, but maybe not everybody does. So
I do.
Okay. Sherry and Lisa, if you have some comments that you'd like to make on the plan, and you're not proficient in how to do redlining in a PDF, let me know. I'll try to work with you on that.
All right, thank you.
you could
All right.
pop it up
Thank
to,
you.
they could put it up in a Google Doc maybe and share it with the specific
Yeah.
people put their comments in there.
Right, yeah, I could do Google, maybe do Google Docs or a Dropbox or something, because I'm sure I can get the stuff from Emily in like a Word doc. Oh, well, she's whatever that, it's gonna be in her Adobe design format, isn't it?
I
Well, we can-
might be able to change mine over to Word, which I'm more familiar with than Adobe, but if I can't, then I'll figure it out. I've used Adobe enough.
Okay, well, if someone has questions, just give me a buzz and I can collaborate with you from that standpoint on what to do.
And for anybody that doesn't know, there's a really nifty program out there on the web called sendthisfile.com, which will let you send files that are way bigger than email allows. So you can send like 100 megs and it just puts it in the cloud and sends somebody a link and they download it.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
yep, Yeah.
And I can take people's comments, like if somebody wants to email me their comments, I can put them in my PDF thing and do strikeouts or add their comments on their behalf.
okay,
Same here, because I've got 2 copies of Adobe Complete, so I can pretty much edit PDFs pretty well.
okay, awesome. All right, so I think we've got that covered from that standpoint. Thank you for your offerings. All right. Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. Very helpful, I think helpful information. And as you know, this was recorded, so Emily will have the accessibility to it. And I'll probably especially point out, Bob, the couple concerns that you raised for Emily to listen to so she can hear what the horse's mouth said. So.
That's fine. Now I'll pinpoint some other specific parcels because I'm looking at a couple of specific parcels that I am aware of that I can point out. I know there's like 147 acre piece that's shows up as yellow and there's one abandoned house on it.
Okay. Yeah, I actually, I think they were supposed to give me an overlay based on our last meeting so that of the shape file for this so that we could overlay the parcels on it. I know I asked for it. I must have just not followed up. So because that in many instances that would be, we could put it up, say on the town GIS that Lynn and Larry are trying to coordinate with me, and then we can talk a little bit more parcel specific if we need to. So, okay, I'll continue to work on that too.
And there's some interesting pieces of land, inside that state zone, which are open space right now, but don't show up as open space.
Okay. Yep. Please highlight those.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good
I
one.
appreciate it. I'll talk
Take
to
care.
everybody soon.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.